Please welcome a partner session with Qualcomm.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sasha Segan from Qualcomm, and I'm really glad to see all of you here for our session on on-device AI. AI moving into your hands, onto your desk, into the devices that you use every day. There's, of course, been a lot of talk about generative AI over the past year. There's going to be a lot of talk about generative AI today. I'm sure there already has been, and there is going to be later today. But a lot of the talk is very often recently about AI occurring in the cloud. That's where the training occurs, and it's where so far a lot of the inference has occurred. But there's going to be a big shift, and we want to get you ready for that shift. And that shift is a lot of that cloud inference of AI moving from the cloud onto the devices that all of us have all around us. So I have two amazing experts here to talk about this. Alex Katuzian is the Senior Vice President and General Manager of our mobile compute and XR business here at Qualcomm. He directs the strategy of those three absolutely critical pieces of the Qualcomm ecosystem. He really defines where we're going in terms of these devices. And then we have here Ash Javeri, the Vice President of Business Development at Meta, who deals with partnerships for Reality Labs, messaging, AR, VR, games, AI machine learning, and all of Meta's strategic alliances, really bringing together Meta and their partners to create great experiences together. So welcome, guys. Thank you so much for coming here today.
Thanks for having us.
And I just wanted to start out because earlier we were talking about how both of our companies have been AI companies for longer than AI has been the hot trend on everyone's lips. And Alex, I was hoping that you could start by giving a little bit of background about how key AI has been to Qualcomm's products, even before generative AI became the thing that everyone's talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been working around AI, I would say, at least for the past 10 years. And we developed all the technology in-house. We worked with external developers. We kind of put that whole story together way before this became popular. And the AI functions have always been, in the past 4 or 5 years, running in the background on our chipset solutions and our software. For example, today's camera image processors on your phones, the way they take a picture in bright light or low light, and how they adjust the picture to get the best type of quality out of the imaging that you're trying to do, or video capability, even assisting in games. Also, for example, if it was malware in a network trying to connect to your phone in a bad way, we would detect those types of erroneous behaviors. So the AI has been running in the background for us and assisting in the quality of your user experience on the phone and all the other devices that we have had for a long, long time. But now AI is completely in the foreground in the way that people want to use it on a daily basis. Tasks could be running in the background for you continuously. Your assistant, your translation, your image creation, all of those things become foreground functions now, and people will decide on how much AI capability do they need in a phone. It becomes a feature that you go out and try to buy a phone on or a PC on, rather than it running in the background. So it's been a long, long time since we've been including AI in our solutions, but now it's really, really in the foreground, and having it on the device is key.
Mm-hmm. And Ash, earlier you really kind of changed my focus when I hadn't previously thought of Meta in its previous life as Facebook as being an AI company, and then you said AI has really been at the heart of a lot of what you've done.
Yeah, look, similar, I think. If you think about what we do on a daily basis, which is we've got billions of people using our apps every day, right? And when you open up your Facebook page or Instagram, you have a personalized feed, right? So we're every day personalizing and trying to deliver relevant feeds and content to billions of people. You know, that is at the underpinning of what you do, you know, with AI in terms of sort of matching and preferences as well. And so we have a long, you know, similarly long
Yes.
history in AI. It's just sort of now it's popped to the top. And you know, if you think about our contributions, you know, we are also at our core very much an open source company, an open source contributor from the early days of things like GraphQL and React that we put out into the community, very much core to what we do. And you know, in the AI space, we've been open sourcing and contributing for over a decade as well. There's, you know, over 1,000 different models and libraries and things that we put out there. Probably the most well-known is PyTorch, which hopefully folks in this room have had experience with. You know, what we saw with PyTorch when we put it out there and opened it up to the community is that the innovation went off the charts, right? Like instead of us doing it, you know, behind our walls, putting it out there and letting the community drive it, push it forward, nurturing that community, checking it back in and progressing, you know, really the power of open source and letting developers build is super core to what we do. And so when we looked at the LLM world, you know, specifically about, you know, what maybe 6 or 9 months ago, LLMs are really hard to build, right? You need engineers, but even more importantly, you need compute, and there just isn't a lot of compute out there, you know, to build these models, to fund building these models, to have the engineers to build these models. We had Llama that we had built, you know, as part of our research efforts. We decided to release that back in February under a research license. We're like, hey, like, let's see what the community can do with this. Let's see what innovation happens. And we were totally blown away. Like 2 different things happened. One is the innovation that we saw in PyTorch, instantly, like that type of innovation happened with Llama. I mean, people got it running on Raspberry Pis and on laptops in a matter of days. Something that, you know, we certainly didn't have on our roadmap and hadn't really thought of, but this is the power of developers and everybody in this room in the community. And then the other interesting thing happened is that we got a lot of calls from businesses and people who were like, hey, we'd really love to use Llama. It's under a research license. Can we use it? We have all these use cases that we've been experimenting with and toying around with, but we're really worried about our data, right? We want to control where our data goes. We want to control you know, who can read it, not just upload it to some service, to some company that's running it. And so we got a lot of demand for, hey, can we take Llama? Can we run it, you know, in our data centers? Can we put it in our virtual sort of cloud networks on AWS or Azure? And so taking those 2 things into account, we're like, okay, this seems like we're onto something. We then retrained Llama, so we created Llama 2, and we released that out to the community in July under a pretty broad commercial license. And similarly, we've seen the community just go bonkers, you know, with it in terms of both people using it, downloading it. You can go check it out on Hugging Face, the innovation, compressing it down. You know, there's big companies like DoorDash and Zoom and Spotify and others that are experimenting and playing around with it, small companies, startups. And so, you know, we're hopeful that this sort of democratizes access to AI and LLMs so that people can build on top of it, right? Like, developers shouldn't be constrained by a lack of GPUs and a lack of engineering talent and a lack of money to build and unlock what can be possible. And, you know, the more we push on there, the more it's, you know, Llama's going to live everywhere, right? It's going to live on the device, it's going to live in the cloud, it's going to live in the data center as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've been playing with variants of Llama 2 on my own devices in my own developer environments, largely on my laptop, and it's been so interesting to see what you can make it do, what its limitations are, where you might want to scale up, and that really gets to sort of the on-device versus cloud question, which is kind of at the heart of this session. And Alex, I was hoping that you could make the case for why, especially the folks in this room, may want to think about implementing these kinds of queries on device, as opposed to just going to the largest possible model, or even, you know, a mid-sized Llama 70B model that's in the cloud. Why keep it on the device?
Sure. So think about how many queries you could do throughout the day of, you know, you're asking a question, you're looking up some data. Billions and billions of queries are going to start to occur during the day. And what you really want to happen is the queries that you really are looking for quickly can be on the device and should be on the device. And you would create a hybrid model where larger scale questions or larger scale queries can run on the cloud and return that answer for you if you're not asking for immediate response. But immediacy, security, and privacy really push on-device AI capabilities. And the way we go about it is, we'll take, great partnership with Meta, and we take Llama, for example. And, if you just purely look at the trillions of operations per second that would happen on a neural processor engine, is not enough for you to try to figure out if it's a good way to have that on device or not. But the way you quantize that model, the way you shrink it down so it can fit within the memory space that, for example, a phone or a PC has, the number of parameters per model that you can run on device, number of tokens per second to try to get accuracy and capability of responding to immediate queries, those are the parameters that you really need to concentrate on. That's what we do to try to get these models on device so that you can have a faster response. You can have a more secure response. You can have a more private response and not be able to go to the cloud all the time. And that round trip delay could cause user experience frustration. And so having many of these queries happen on device not only saves money because you're not burning the cloud processing capability, not only does it give you privacy, and the immediacy of the data that's available to you becomes much faster while it's on device. In fact, we were showing, if you recall, we were showing on-device capabilities on AI for generative AI and creating images without even being connected to anything, not even connected to the cloud, not even connected to the cellular network. We just run stuff on device.
Yeah, your airplane mode demos are.
Yeah.
And look, I would just add on that, like if you think about, I agree with you completely. The speed matters, right? Latency matters. I think we've seen that through everything we've all built. Is like the faster you make something, the more people use it. They find it useful. When I think about on device, and I think about like access to all the hardware, right? The sensors, the cameras, the gyros, the GPS, all that. Like, there's stuff that you want to do in the moment that you don't want to wait for, right? That you don't have the luxury to wait for because your position changes or you've moved or something. And so, the more you can do on device in real time, like the better an experience that you can unlock. When we think about things like AR filters and camera effects in Instagram, right? You want to try something on. Before you buy it, like you want to do that like this, right? You don't want to wait for like a round trip and see what it looks like. And if you move, right, you want to see what it looks like from the side. Like you're not going to be able to do those round trips to the cloud no matter how fast your network is. You want to be able to do all of that on device. And so, as developers, I think if you think about being able to access everything on the device, being able to do that, with the speed and the power, that you guys are putting in there, you can just unlock all kinds of amazing experiences with the power of AI on the device.
Right.
So you mentioned camera filters, but of course you guys are a leading XR hardware company, and we are also a leading XR hardware company. We're kind of together leading XR hardware companies. And in the XR experience, as we get to the next level of XR, how do you guys see generative AI playing a role in improving or popularizing XR, and what of that would occur on the device and what would potentially occur in the cloud?
Yeah, and look, I would say there's already a lot happening like on the device. If you think about things like hand tracking that we do inside of Quest, or room reconstruction, a lot of that is already underpinned on AI that's running on your guys' awesome processor. That's already happening on device. So AI and XR wouldn't have gotten to as far as it has without the two of them sort of working together. When I think about like different use cases as we look into the future, if I think about sort of LLMs specifically, I think that there's like great work that folks are doing. Developers are experimenting with things like NPCs, right? These characters in a game that sort of are on a loop that repeat the same thing over and over again. They're starting to become more dynamic and more interactive if you sort of fine-tune your LLM and scope it to, a much narrower but broader than a loop type of a dialogue. I think in the limit, this can look like things like, personalized embodied avatar-based assistance, right? I think one of the challenging things today is like the real input mechanism and the conversation mechanism with AI is text-based. You put text in, you get text out. We're starting to see images, we're starting to see video. But to me, for this to really resonate, like you kind of want to interact with somebody the way we're interacting. And so to the extent that you can embody the AI, right, which we're able to do through all the work that we're doing in XR, to the extent that you're able to make it relevant, which you can do through the models, I think that starts unlocking all kinds of magical experiences through presence and through AI. Also, we're seeing developers take things like Code Llama and make their code like faster and more efficient. You can do game scripting as well. And then when I think about the metaverse more broadly, and I think this is where, in some ways, to me, AI is the key that unlocks the metaverse vision, right? And the reason is it's really hard to reconstruct 3D spaces. If I want to build this room in VR today, I got to pick up Unity. I don't know how to do Unity. Like, I don't know how to make all this stuff happen, the textures, the lighting, the people, all that stuff. But I can certainly say, make me a big room with a black stage, white chairs, and a podium. And if that gets generated for me by the machine, suddenly you've unlocked my creativity. You've unlocked the creativity of anyone with an imagination that can just speak to the machine, and it can create the world. And I think that is sort of what unlocks that connection and that presence. I always think about, I can't always watch football with my mom on Sundays, but what I can do is say, hey, make me that room with the ugly brown taupe sofa and the shag carpeting that we had when I was growing up, and I can meet my mom there, right? Neither of us can design that, but I think the more you can use your voice to generate these worlds, the more everyone finds something relevant and they can express themselves. And I tend to think about it as the camera on the phone was the thing that really unlocked Facebook and Instagram, right? Before that, if you think about it, for those who remember, you had your digital camera and you connected it and you had to download it and find the picture and upload it, and there's just a bunch of jankiness in that process, as opposed to, let me take this thing out, take a picture, and then we saw certainly the usage on our apps and others go away. And I think that's the same thing of Gen AI for the metaverse and all the applications trying to do, is really going to unlock and empower users to go do that.
Yeah. And just to add on top of that, Gen AI, when you're generating an image or a 3D reconstruction, people are also used to having stuff run on a CPU or a GPU, and we're not precluding that from happening, but NPUs in particular are super efficient in running LVMs, so large visual models, instead of just LLMs. And so if anything's going from speech or text to an image or a video, that type of creation and efficiency of processing on device, really an NPU comes in super handy. And like we talked about earlier, we've been developing that type of technology for such a long time now, and everything was running in the background, and now your use cases are in the foreground. And any personalization, whether you're on an XR device or a PC or a phone, becomes very critical. It's your personal environment, your personal use cases, your personal methods, and ways of doing things throughout the day that become collected and done for you. And so I think a great partnership with Meta around XR, all XR. So VR, MR, mixed reality, as well as augmented reality. And just think about it. You want to have that conversation, especially if you're wearing AR glasses and you're looking at the world and you want to impose images on top or be able to interact with other people's images that they've left. You want to be able to talk to your assistant. You want to be able to do things, not just typing it in or moving your hands. You just want to say something and things will happen for you. And that's the world we're headed to.
And now, what you're saying about NPUs actually got to what my next question was, which is, are the devices we use going to need to be re-architected for generative AI? Are there changes in the kinds of specs or the kinds of structures in the devices from maybe what people were commonly using a few years ago to a device that is really designed for generative AI from the ground up? What does that kind of device look like?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a stab at it from a underlying technology perspective, and maybe on a device perspective, you can chime in for sure. But for us, we counted on, for a really, really good user experience, we started to enhance our CPU as a general processor, GPU obviously for graphical user interfaces and gaming, which is so popular, camera, because everyone uses their camera, you just don't carry a camera with you anymore, and then connectivity for cellular connectivity or Wi-Fi connectivity or Bluetooth connectivity is essential, as table stakes. But like I said, from 3 or 4 years ago, the NPU became one of those pillars of user experience. And now for us, making sure, because we're a heterogeneous system, meaning as functions come through, we can run it on a CPU or a GPU or an NPU. We want to make sure the NPU becomes a very, very strong player, which leads to applications that you were pointing out to before, where everyday use cases, people will take it for granted, I'm using this, but it's actually running on an NPU or a combination of a CPU and NPU. And so we're going to change our devices to make NPU more central. I'm 100% sure as devices grow, the actual end devices grow, the memory configurations will become different, the camera configurations will become different, and the user experience, the UI that's provided to the end user will be working in conjunction with those technologies to provide that user experience.
So the UIs could even be dynamic. The UIs could be generated by generative AI.
It can, yes, it sure can.
Yeah, and look, I think when we think about things like computer vision pipelines and ML pipelines, we work very closely together on how do we optimize those, not just for ourselves, but for sort of all developers, right? So if I think of us as a platform provider, there's a bunch of stuff that we want to help drive forward based on our use cases, projected use cases. If I think about AR glasses, one day we'll have untethered AR glasses that do everything on the glasses itself. We're a bit away from that. There's a lot that we need to progress forward, but thinking through that, thinking about AI, thinking about the architecture, I think helps advance that vision and kind of puts a new wrinkle in it, and a positive wrinkle in a way that maybe we hadn't thought about like a couple of years ago. And then, like, as a developer, right, a platform holder, we have these aspirations as a developer. Anything that we can push down to the device and do on the device and make it run faster and cheaper, I think that's good. And just like as citizens, like the more you can do, on your wrist, I think it's just like it's a better experience. And I think about it a little bit as like, okay, are there batch things that I want to run in the cloud, right? Like if I'm a company and I'm deploying, I don't know, like I want all my documents in there so they're searchable or summarizable or whatever. Like that's not real-time stuff. Like I can run that in the batch, I can run that in the cloud, I can wait for it to complete. There's stuff that I want to deliver immediately, like right now, with speed and accuracy. And how do I think about splitting those two things and like sort of the split architecture? I mean, I think in some ways, like, if you think about the history of computing, it sort of started off with like the mainframe and dumb client. Like we've gone through these client server waves, and like it was like mainframe, and then the PC came, and we're back on the client, and then mobile came, and the cloud was really the server. And I think we're now kind of on the precipice of that next evolution where the device sort of takes hold again, and it becomes more important because you can run a bunch of these amazing things on the device. And it doesn't mean the cloud isn't going anywhere, but I think there's more power kind of going to be back in the handset in a way that there wasn't, maybe in the pre-sort of AI world.
Well, I wish we had a 40-minute session, but unfortunately we don't. The good news for anyone who is looking into this or thinks this has been interesting is we have some amazing events coming up in the future. Meta Connect coming up from Meta very soon, Snapdragon Summit coming from Qualcomm next month, and we'll continue the conversation then.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
So much. Thank you.
Thanks.